Okay, so without further ado, I am going to introduce our speaker, Miss Natalie Beavers. So she has lived with epilepsy for nearly 40 years. During her brain testing and surgeries in 2007 and 2008, she met with many epilepsy survivors and their families while she was hospitalized. So she came up with the idea of to start a charity and a support group that may help many people like herself. And so Angels of Epilepsy Charity and Advocacy organization was started in late 2008. Since then, she's been able to help many individuals and their families over the past 10 years. So most recently, in last year in 2018, Natalie and Angels of Epilepsy received 3 awards in recognition of dedication and positive impact through service. She has also had the opportunity to appear and speak to a couple about the importance of epilepsy awareness and education on a well-known show called Divorce Court. So over the past years, Angels of Epilepsy has traveled to many states to advocate and support the many lives that matter in the epilepsy community. The main goal of the organization is to support and become family to the many who are living with epilepsy. And so this is Ms. Beaver's first time ever speaking in terms of being in a webinar format. So we want to make sure we make her feel welcome. And I told her that, we're one big happy family here. So we appreciate her being willing to share her story with us. So right now we're going to switch over to her so that she can share her screen with us.
Hello, everyone. My name is Natalie Beavers. Hope that you all are doing great today. I would love for you all to bear with me. I had a seizure 2 days ago. It was a bad grand mal seizure, and I am hurting a little bit, but I am okay. So please just bear with me if I am talking a little slow due to my bitten tongue. But I am so grateful to be here to speak with you all today and to introduce myself. Um, I am Natalie Beavers. I have been living with epilepsy for 36 years, and it's been quite, hard times with me. I was diagnosed at the age of 5. My parents took me to the hospital due to me having a high temperature, and I started to seize. Once they took me to the hospital, the doctors did testing and they saw a scar on the left side of my brain the size of a dime. And that's how they discovered that due to the consistent seizures that I was having, I was diagnosed with epilepsy again at the age of 5. I dealt with epilepsy during elementary school and middle school. I am grateful that growing up in the early 80s, I wasn't looked at different compared to how the students, the children and teens are going through today. My classmates, my teachers, and neighborhood friends, they actually supported me. They helped me. If they saw me have a seizure in the classroom or on the playground, they literally helped me or they called for help. It's a little bit different when it comes to that nowadays. When I began high school, the um, doctors took me off medications because they stated that I was seizure free. I had no seizures during my entire high school years. So the doctors had taken me off of seizure medication. But my sophomore year in college, the seizures came back and it came back quite strong. As years went by, I dealt with the neurologist that I was seeing at the time. And due to an exam that he saw, he stated that the uh, scar tissue that was on the left side of my brain, the size of a dime, was no longer the size of a dime. The tissue has spread it on my left temporal lobe. They referred me to see specialists at Emory University Hospital here in Atlanta. The doctors that deal with neurology and specialize with epilepsy. And due to the exams and testing that they took, I did have a lot of damaged tissue on my left temporal lobe, and they also discovered a cyst on the back of my brain. My family and myself were shocked. Um, I did a lot of testing in 2007, 2008 at Emory University, where the doctors did MRIs, EEGs, and so forth. I decided to have my first brain surgery, craniotomy, for the doctors to place the electrodes on the surface of my brain so they can get detailed information of exactly where the seizures were coming from. They actually found the location, and a couple of months later, I did have my final craniotomy in 2008, right before Barack Obama made president. And they removed the damaged tissue from the left temporal lobe, but they decided to keep the cyst on the back of my brain because it was on a part of the brain. If they were to go near it, I could possibly be paralyzed. So I do have a decrease in my seizure activity, but I still have seizures from time to time, again, due to the cyst that's on the back of my brain. Again, over the past 36 years, I've been battling with epilepsy. While I was in the hospital, I met so many different patients that were there, and we had similar stories. My parents also met other survivors and their families as well. Again, we had similar stories. We talked a lot, and many of us talked about how we need support groups that deal with people battling with epilepsy. We heard about the organizations and charities that they do have in different states, but we basically wanted to just have like support groups where it's like a personal family type of connection. But I asked my father, I said, I really truly want to help these people who are just like me. And he stated that you can do it. So, right before my final brain surgery in 2008, I put all of my ideas together. I did a lot of writing and a lot of research, and I started the Angels of Epilepsy Foundation. Um, Let me scroll down here a little bit. Angels of Epilepsy is a 501c3 nonprofit charity and advocacy outside of Atlanta, Georgia, that provide the needs and resources for the many survivors and families in this community. For the past 10 years, we've helped many survivors here in Georgia and in many other states. Again, that's myself and one of the doctors where I had the electrodes placed on the surface of my brain. But again, I came up with the idea to start this organization when I spent much time at Emory University Epilepsy Center in Atlanta during 2007, 2008. I met many epilepsy survivors with similar stories and concerns. And myself, my family, we put the ideas together. And after my final brain surgery, I started the Angels of Epilepsy Foundation. Angels of Epilepsy visit patients with gifts and supplies needed while being hospitalized for brain testing or surgery. The gift bags or baskets we provide include blankets, headscarves, socks, books, writing pads and utensils, snacks, and more. We also provide resources to assist families that are there with patients as well. A lot of people at these hospitals and they deal with the testing. They are there at the hospitals for weeks, and that the parents, caregivers, or whomever that who are there with the patient, they're actually drawn out. Many of them sleep in the chairs in the room. They are, spending a lot of money dealing with trying to eat, paying for parking, and so forth. So my charity also helps the caregivers and families battling with hardship during that time. Sometimes we provide hotel stay, we pay for parking, and we also give gift cards for them to accommodate them to eat and so forth. Angels of Epilepsy visits local schools, health seminars, churches, and some businesses to give educational information about epilepsy and first aid tips for seizures. My charity, we definitely feel that it's very important for many schools to know the first aid tips procedures, because there aren't many that know about it. Many of them, they just sit there and they don't know what to do. But we have visited many schools um, to give definite information and first aid tips procedures. Angels of Epilepsy has seminars and workshops throughout the year to educate and provide resources to the public and the epilepsy community. We also participate in other charity events throughout the state of Georgia. And we've also visited other charity events and seminars in other states as well. Did you know that anyone of any age, race, or gender can be diagnosed with epilepsy? Over the past years, our charity has noticed the increase of African Americans being diagnosed with epilepsy. We receive many calls throughout the month asking questions about epilepsy resources and assistance. Um, Being in Atlanta, we more so deal with a lot of African Americans that are battling with epilepsy. We have dealt with some Hispanic families as well. Many of them, when they are recently diagnosed, whether it's their child or themselves, they have been referred to contact our charity, or they simply find something on social media or just Google, and they ask a lot of questions because many of them don't know about epilepsy until they're actually diagnosed with it. And that's the importance of why my charity, we have seminars and workshops, so we can provide educational information, and also so they can hear from different survivors and even family members that are going through the battle dealing with epilepsy. What can we do to interact with epilepsy survivors and families in the Black and minority communities? Here are a few suggestions. This is what myself and my family and team, what we deal with. We deal with local charities partnering or working together to make plans for outreach. Local monthly group sessions, webinars, live social media conversations open to the Blacks and minorities living with epilepsy. Meet and greet workshops throughout the year. I think that's an excellent idea because many people need to know and hear other people's story. It helps out a lot. Black community advocates and survivor seminars with panel discussions. My charity has done many of that. And over the past, I would say 2.5 years, we've had actual panel discussions where questions are asked, and many people are so shocked to hear from the actual survivors and their, whether it's their battle or their ups and downs or even just suggestions from them. It's great just to have a panel discussion and hear from other survivors as well as families and caregivers as well. Family involvement activities such as yoga, exercise sessions, meditation, and activity for children. That's also a great idea to have communication. The majority of survivors that Angels of Epilepsy interact with in our state, which is Georgia, are Black. Out of state, it is 40% Black, 40% white, and 20% Hispanics or other races. Angels of Epilepsy is launching our I Am Me campaign, which is coming soon. We have local and out-of-state survivors coming here for photo and filming opportunity to tell a brief story about their life with epilepsy. It will appear on our website, social media, monthly newsletters, and YouTube channel. It's a great idea. I came up with the idea to do this because many people, I feel that if the voices are being heard, more people they wouldn't be ashamed to actually talk about their life challenges with epilepsy. We've received phone calls from many people that states that they are a little ashamed to talk about it or to tell family members or even friends or coworkers that they battle with epilepsy. But me being an advocate and a survivor, I do inform him to not be ashamed to let other people know about your battle. It's okay to tell your story. It's okay to not be ashamed that you have epilepsy. So we are kicking off the I Am Me campaign coming soon. Actually, next week we will have the photo and filming. We have already received about over 10 emails from epilepsy survivors, and even some are coming out of state just to participate. So we are very thankful for that. 1 in 26 people in the US will develop epilepsy, and the diagnosis that is at an increase. It is very important for charities, organizations, and groups to stay connected so we can work together to engage racial and ethnic minorities living with epilepsy. Angels of Epilepsy is pretty much on all social media. I would love for you all to follow us so we can stay connected. We're on Facebook at Angels of Epilepsy Foundation. We're on Twitter at AO Epilepsy. Instagram, angels_of_epilepsy. On Pinterest, Angels of Epilepsy, and on the YouTube channel. We would love for you to join. You can just search Angels of Epilepsy and join us on there. And feel free to visit our website at www.angelsofepilepsy.org. And AOE, thanks you so much. I do appreciate telling a brief story about my life living with epilepsy for over 36 years now. And the charity, again, is Angels of Epilepsy, and we love to connect with other charities or organizations, schools, and so forth, so we can all spread the word about epilepsy, and also just gain with the minorities who are battling with this as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Natalie. We appreciate you taking the time to share that with us. And as you started off with, you had shared with me, that you did have an episode this week. And so, you pushing through that to still, make this commitment to share with us. We really appreciate that. And we do not take that for granted. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, but for anyone else who has a question for Natalie, feel free to raise your hand. Then I will unmute you. If you know how to unmute yourself, then you can unmute yourself, and and I'll acknowledge you, and then you can ask Natalie a question. But for some of you, I have muted you, so you might need to raise your hand for me to unmute you. So while people get their questions together, Natalie, I want you to share with us some tips in terms of if you're not a person living with epilepsy, but you would like to still engage and support others, and especially family members. If you have a family member who has epilepsy, but you are not the person yourself living with it, what are some things that you can do to show your support and to really try to be there for that person?
I would suggest there are many people, and actually I have, friends and old coworkers. They have no one that battles with epilepsy, but they know some of them know about it because they may know someone who have it, or they may have seen me years ago fall out at work, and it becomes an interest to them of, wow, I need to know about epilepsy. So that's another reason why we actually post on social media as well. Whether you have epilepsy or not, please just come out just to get educational information. And we also just let them know that anyone of any age at any time can be diagnosed with epilepsy. So it's always good to get the educational information to kind of, know in advance, just to be prepared. But definitely, family members and so forth. I think, again, the phone calls that we've received, many people, they state that I did not know about epilepsy until I was diagnosed. And I just feel like whether it's schools, clinics, or anything like that, I think brochures and things like that just needs to be out there in reference to epilepsy. So you never know, people could possibly just pick it up and read about it. But definitely, I think social media as well, you can gain a lot of input from people, or just even responses from people, in reference to wanting to know about epilepsy.
Another thing that we find of interest in terms of wanting to know more about is, um, are there any characteristics of, being a Black person living with epilepsy that might just be unique or different from any other person of a different racial or ethnic group who might be living with epilepsy?
Many people, and I have heard with a lot of the phone calls that our charity has received, one African American female, she stated that I didn't know that Black people can be diagnosed with this. And I told her, I replied and said, we all have a brain. That doesn't matter. A Hispanic family stated that, wow, I've never, we were never told about this. Is this some kind of curse? Or is this something that, we just didn't really know about it? And I stated to them, even in the past, even in Black history and the ancestry, there were people that battle with epilepsy even back then. So it's about doing research. I didn't really know too much about it until I became a lot older, battling with the epilepsy, and I knew how to do research on Google and so forth. And I read up on a lot. But many people feel that, I should not have this. What is going on? Is this some type of evil spirit? And I just let them know anyone with a brain can be diagnosed with epilepsy. And just because, you're Black, it doesn't matter what race, age or gender when it comes to that.
One more question, and then I'm actually going to turn it over to Dr. Steve Owens from the Epilepsy Foundation, who has now joined us. But we have quite a few providers on the call today, actual nurses. So are there any tips or suggestions you will have around the aspect of patient-provider communications around epilepsy, even if that provider is not a specialist in terms of neurology?
You're asking me this question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, so if you have any tips in terms of like speaking to providers who may just be like generalists, so they may not be specialists, but is there any things that, that they could know or think of or consider when they're working with their patients, just about, looking for the signs and symptoms perhaps of epilepsy?
Yes, I definitely would definitely want them to know the first aid tips for seizures, so they can definitely let the family members know when it's related to a child, and also even the adult, just for them to know the specific things about epilepsy and the education part on it, on the education part of it. Um, I had received phone calls from local nurses that stated that they would like brochures in reference to just any type of tips when it comes to seizure activity. Also, with Angels of Epilepsy speaking at some local schools, many of the nurses have contacted our charity to ask to bring brochures and information because they feel that it's important. We've also even had a few principals to contact our charity to say, hey, we know that you have spoken to our students, but we would like for you to speak with the adults here, which is the teachers, and also the other staffs, whether it's cafeteria. They have a clinical nurse, but they would just like to see how do they deal with the first aid tips for seizures. Also, we have banners, posters rather, that we give to the schools, and they have an option. They can, have it around in the cafeteria or in the clinic area. But we definitely let them know that it's great to have visibility of first aid tips or any information regarding epilepsy, because anyone at any time could have a seizure, and they may not even be diagnosed with it. Say, for instance, a football player, a soccer player, or someone in the athletic department, or someone is just overheated. they definitely need to know what to do if a seizure occurs. So we definitely do provide that information, and we do suggest that it's very important, whether it's nursing, schools, or whomever, to have that information.
Well, thank you again, Natalie. We really appreciate you sharing with us